All the processed bag, canned, box food, that's not food. And it does nothing for our body.
Even black beans in a can?
Can't do anything. And you make, not even the idea of lunar, that once you cook it above like 105 degrees, all the nutritional value is gone. It's just gone. So you keep eating, trying to get that end, and it doesn't work.
That ain't there.
It ain't there.
Transition to being a vegan about three
There's
months ago.
one more step to take.
All right.
You call it, yeah, raw, yeah. But, no, you can do like that right now. I just have a brother, he just turned 47, and he called me in the hospital, vegan, what do you call that? Kidney stones.
Oh.
Pain. He's calling this thing, he told me, give me morphine, Percodan, give me anything. Everything. Yeah. But you have to change to make sure you balance out with something that can, neutralize the waste in your body. So the idea is getting rid of the waste in your body. We keep putting more and more waste in that the body can't keep up with, so then the organs don't get the energy they need, and everything starts shutting down. That's when you start going down like that.
What will be the next transition you're talking about? Raw.
Yeah. You got to start. If you right now, make it real simple. If right now you eat this much, cut it in half and eat raw. Even if you don't do anything else, cut it in half and eat raw. So if your plate is this big, half the plate should be raw. That's a simple way. And then as you start cleaning out, you start waking up.
You saw, yeah, being
And then you
aware.
say, okay, what else can I do? What else can I do? That's when you start calling. Because it doesn't take much. The body, the body is divine in that it will respond if you give it what it needs, not what you want.
It's on.
Yeah. Sick isn't sick. I got people all over the country, the world. They call and brother down in, the two Spanish brothers. They look like twins.
Yeah,
Puerto
you
Rico,
come-
right? Did you see them since?
I understand.
Big old tumor cancer. He wanted to cut his eye out.
Ooh.
Right?
I,
This was last July. Last year,
Yeah.
July.
that's from last time I seen them. They had.
Right? Remember he had something on his nose one time?
Yeah.
Right. That's gone. Now you got something like, you want me to show you the picture? You gonna say, what? Ugh.
As a matter of fact, somebody was asking about them.
Yeah, it's rough down in Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
He's
yeah, I
down, he's
know.
down there, man.
Yeah.
He's down there. Yeah, man.
They
Moreno.
told me they was going back down there.
Yeah, he was up here. His wife was down there.
Yeah.
He came back. I'm going to do something at the beginning. This is January.
Yeah. Dang, man.
This is January of last year. July of last year.
Yeah.
Right? It's July of last
You
year.
working with them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then look at this here. Now,
Dang, man.
yep. Still. And they talking about they want to cut his eye out. Right? They said, man, we got cancer. We got to take it out. I said, let's hold up.
Something like the water down there?
Right? Getting bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah.
Now, it pop. Pop.
Imagine it pop.
Drained out. And this was January.
Mm-hmm.
So half a year. That's January. Right, but this was before January. This was starting.
Is that just accumulated by cancer?
You couldn't see. They wanted to cut his eye out. So literally.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then in January, see? Sent me the picture. It popped. Right? Started draining everything. So we put the thing on. And at this point, he said, I can see. I can see. They still want to cut his eye out.
You already know they want to eat.
I'm telling you. They got the eye ready for somebody else.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
you know
he said,
Somebody needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's clear. Now
George
it's
Soros's
small.
nephew or something.
Yep. Yep.
Nelson Rockefeller.
Yeah, small thing now.
What's in an abscess or cancer?
They called it cancer. But tumor, whatever. Whatever it is, it ain't. Like I said, sick isn't sick. Whatever they tell you, it ain't it. You know? Sick is not it.
What was your name of your book again?
I'll give you my website.
What's your?
The Amen, the,
Can you put it up on the board?
yeah.
There's a marker in that little basket on this side.
The wall you can buy, right?
Yeah, supposed to be.
You down in South, East Coast or
New York.
New York?
Yeah. And, oh, you can go to, PayPal, right? PayPal. Natural hygienist.
How long have you been doing this?
I'm 60, I'm going on 62, and I've been doing it since 84.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Hmm? Oh, yeah. I would what you want down, because I get them on in New York.
A big one.
Beautiful.
I'm proud of you, girl. You moving on up. Yeah.
And that
Is it due?
is 35, and that includes shipping
For your book.
for the book. So you can go to PayPal, and say you want to send money to naturalhygienist@gmail.com, 35.
Now, do you normally work alone or
What do you mean?
like
Huh?
do you like work by yourself or
I work with lots of people.
I mean like when you like actually like somebody else.
Oh, yeah, I work with myself. Yeah. The man guy's on his way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to him earlier.
Yeah.
Ran into a roadblock.
Yeah,
Block was
I'll be on
literally
church.
blocked off.
Up on Church, they cut the road, they put blockade up on Church Street, so you had to take 495 all the way around.
Oh, right.
Collectively, sincerely starting to reject them. Because that's the energy that's necessary to overcome the dark priesthood. Because it has to be understood, it's difficult for people to accept that they have never really been given religion, because people think they've been given religion. The masses have never been given religion, they've been fed dogma, which is the key as to why their power structure is so strong. And so the people, imagine in their mind that they have some spiritual counter, and they don't, because they're dealing with dogma. And the dogma they're dealing with is controlled by the priesthood. So it's almost like, they're dealt a deck of marked cards, and they keep going from generation to generation and not winning. And the real reason why is because they've been trained to think that emotionalism is spirituality. And we've perfected, that emotionalism, and we've been calling it spirituality. It doesn't work. It just works for those who propagate it. They're the only ones who get wealthy. And the poor suffer and die. And this is pretty much the argument that Yahusha was making. And it's the argument that you see in the Book of the East too. And in the circles of the Quran, with the priesthood, they keep on draining the people, and they're always selling them gods that have no heart to sympathize, no power to save, no ears to hear, but the people won't let it go. And so meanwhile, they get drained, and the priesthood gets entrenched. And this is pretty much what has been happening in Islam. Put the sun in. But when Drawley set up the divine and national movement, then he told the Moors to go back to the state of mind of their ancient mothers and fathers. And then he also warned the Moors, he said, be careful, Moors, some of your own brothers and sisters wearing turbans and feathers will be trying to put you back into slavery. And then he reminded us to keep us on our toes. He said, the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you'd go back to sleep. You know, so when you start studying, you'll find out a lot of directives. That's what makes the questionnaire so valuable. You know, if you take the questionnaire and answer the questionnaire, and then take the answers, and then amend them. And if they create another question, answer them. Then take it and take them to a third degree. And most likely you'll probably comprehend where he's telling you. You know, because that's how I used to look at the questionnaire. But when I first got the literature, you know, actually in late 70s, just short of the 80s, around 77, 78, you know, I kind of saw through it then. You know what I mean? Because I always had the habit that I developed from childhood to go in and come from the backside. You know, I mean, it's a little thing I've always done when I was a child. So, you know, immediately I started doing research and, you know, going into the other side. But what we recognize is that it immediately makes people who are less than honorable uncomfortable because they don't expect you to see them. You know, because both Europeans and Asiatics have been misrepresenting property and profiting of the people while doing it. You know, so anyway, these are some fundamental facts that you need to know. I'm going to do a little bit more editorials on this, and there's some added stuff. And a lot of this is stuff that Europeans have been imposing too. So I'm taking and reviewing a lot of stuff and then putting it in its proper perspective. Everyone take a picture of the board because I'm going to use the board, so I want you to get that information from around here. Do you have any cards with you, Ramanu?
No. I'll put my number down.
All right. Excuse me. What you saying?
I'm talking about.
I apologize.
I was saying I submitted my name correction judicial proclamation, and I had to do it in about the 90 or something. I was just wondering how long is that process?
You got to roll up.
I submitted my name correction and my judicial proclamation.
You send it in.
Sent it in, yes.
As it goes around, yeah.
And I was just wondering how long does that process take?
Because I didn't know you were sending it yet.
It would
When you
probably,
brought it here, you was
physically,
done.
probably try to bring
You
that
was still,
physically.
so you now is that already bag. You know, Brother Taj, I heard you talking about, you know, like the church and so forth, and I was just out here talking to your sister out front, and, you know, thought I was still, you know, state pastor, you know, and when we got to talk, when you talk to people about the awakening and the changes, most of the time people still in the church will go, yeah, things have changed. But they really don't know what you're talking about. They're talking about people acting up in the church.
Yeah.
Like they've been acting up, you just see it more.
Right.
I said, but it's the stuff that created the whole, you know,
That whole
illusion,
paradigm.
the whole paradigm that you're dealing with that is shifting and people aren't even, you know,
Yeah, but they
feeling
themselves-
obligated to go. But some people are just thinking when you say, oh, change, yeah.
Immediate answer, the apostasy that they all were told about.
The falling away.
The apostasy is what they're talking about. But you're
I
the
call it the Great
manifest.
Awakening.
You're the manifest of the apostasy that the book is telling them about.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'll be, you know, we were kind of starting to talk about this a little bit on the way down. You know, where people who don't understand may think it's something different,
Yeah.
and they've already been told.
Yeah.
They've been already
And
forewarned.
they don't think, no, they don't think it's this. It's supposed to be all those demonic people. Are you gonna be, more back here up there? Because this is like, now they have, I have to go to one way, you know, go out.
Do what's
Are
comfortable
you
for
gonna
you.
teach them like the other people?
Huh?
Up there, everything else, I'll just focus on you here.
It's on
Yeah, do what's comfortable for you.
what it is. I'm in class right now. Down the street. Yeah, down the street from here. All right. All right. All right. All right then. Peace.
Friday night?
Now, some of this resentment is Europeans telling the truth. Well, what I'm doing, I'm taking it and I'm editing it, and saying what should be said. Let's keep in mind, U.S. citizens cannot contest any legislation that comes out of the U.S. Congress, because they are essentially the stock beneficiaries and have been, meaning that they are the U.S. You know, and if they please not to be, they got to go home. You know, this is one of the discomforts that a lot of Europeans are finding themselves in, who are starting to tell the truth. You know, and this is also why a lot of the de facto operatives keep trying to tie active Moors with the European sovereignty groups, trying to make it appear that they are on the same political status, and it is not.
It's not. Brother Abdullah brought that up last week, in sovereign citizen, they're calling you a terrorist.
Yeah, well, that's why
That's
they do
the-
that. No, it's a side-out misinformation, you know, but, you know, and it's expected, because they've been waging war. You know, the idea that that's a mere opinion, you know, that just surfaced, you know, they have what you call, they got workbooks already prepared with PSYOPs. The PSYOPs didn't start, you know, people become more and more conscious. You know, they just come out with a new deal. But like, when people understand this thing, you know, they would automatically know that. As an example, just like when you see active Moors starting to claim birthright and Europeans making those types of statements. Now, what is it that the average person should know to recognize that's a PSYOP? Because everybody in the world, including all politicians, know that the oldest running treaty operating on the earth is the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the Moroccan Empire and the United States, i.e. Britain. The United States is a colony operating on the land. In other words, they were sanctioned to do business at Morocco. You know, so when they even pretend that they don't know who the Moors are, that's a fraud, and they get away with it because what they're trying to do is intimidate the heirs who are in a state of awakening. You know, so it's like a prepared action, if you get the point. No different than, you know, you can go in an ordinary, you know, child's dictionary and show anyone that these people of Asiatic African descent that think they Negroes and blacks are Moors. You can show it right with no scholarship. So when anyone even makes a disparaging statement against it, they're clearly trying to denationalize it. And people who don't understand it or don't know who they are are the people they're trying to influence. Because the more people are active, because that's what it takes. Because when the heirs to the estate start showing any activity by law, the trustees or fofers, because they're really fofers, they're not so much trustees, although they set up a trust system, they're dealing in feudal law. So a fofer would be parallel to a trustee, but in feudal law. And so this is how they've been operating, and so it's not in their interest, to see this go, because what happens, just what you see happening has been killing the T-bonds. See, it's sort of like the underlying cause that causes other activities, cause and effect.
This is a good, so I should start recording. Awakening Minds tonight, and our instructor for the night is Grand Sheikh Taj Tarik Bey. Let's welcome him.
Glad to be here at House of Reawakening Minds. And I was I pulled this up while I was talking, off my files, and I'm doing some editorials to it, because this is going to sort of like give you a little bit of background, more concise background, so you can understand why certain things we're telling people that we're telling them. And also, it becomes obvious why people in political forums who've been the beneficiaries of the fraud will always attack this information or anyone dispensing this information, because it liberates the people who they've had fooled for generations. Actually, generations. And this is also back to the fact that the average persons who have been miseducated and misguided under the John D. Rockefeller, Frederick T. Gates General Education Board and its subsidiaries, because all educational institutions operating under the United States Corporation Company in the Western Hemisphere are actually members of the Rockefeller Foundation. So the educational systems here are controlled by the private Rockefeller Foundation. That's very important to understand. And it's very important to understand that the operations are essentially geared to the enforcement of the unum sanctum policies of the Roman Catholic Church, which is the source of the wars and the miseries on the planet, and also human sacrifices. So when people understand those connections, for them not to expect them to attack those who are dispensing this information would be a naive position. Because what it also does, when you start dispensing this kind of information, it exposes people on your side who you never suspected, who are parties to this thing. And then, of course, when people start looking deeper, even though you're dealing with a hierarchical system, they'll understand that most of their so-called people who they think that's working for them are really working for popes of Rome under the unum sanctum policy. And then they look a little deeper into the 501c3 skull and bones agreement that they think is a tax-exempt agreement with Jesus, and find out they're really working for the Pope. So what we try to do is, give people key information, knowing that you cannot do in a few meetings undo what Rome has had the power to do, and the control in the institutions to cultivate for actually a couple of centuries. However, people with any degree of divine mind, you give them what you call puzzle facts or primal cornerstone information and get them, just like the prophet would say, if I could just get you all thinking again, you'd save yourselves. You know, so I try not to operate on any degree that deals with beliefs. I try to deal with information, facts, maxims of law, maxims of ethics, things that are researchable, and I try to approach things that people are familiar with and then show them another side of it. So it becomes their own. And I don't promote followership. As a matter of fact, personally, I abhor followership. You know, followership is what got our people in this trouble in the first place. You know, and it's sort of like the prophet said in the Holy Quran, you know, when, you know, his missionary work is essentially to remove the priesthood from between you and Allah. And this is why a lot of people, when they begin to study Nubudrali and get in positions of authority, and then really realize that he's actually dissembling the priesthood, then they start betraying the movement or betraying him. And you can understand, not justify it, but you can understand their motives. But if people really understand the nuances and established facts, they will come to these conclusions themselves. And as a matter of fact, many of the people who may be staunch adversaries to this information, if they were exposed to this information, many of them will become some of your most powerful and honorable proponents of trying to liberate their people. The fact of the matter is, many people who are in positions of leadership or assumed leadership will not deal with this kind of information because it will tear their institutions down very quickly, because people will discover that they're part of the problem. You know, so again, one of the things that we were mentioning earlier, we wanted to talk about, you know, your adverse claim, what it actually is, how deep it goes, how broad it goes. And while we talked about it, you know, a lot of people, they still don't get it, or they're not quite getting it. And so we're following up on last lessons that we were dealing with, the adverse claim, and the signature. Because we need them to really understand how is, I know that many people have heard the issue that people have said, and many Europeans have said, you know, your signature is the money. That's false. It's not, it's like an indirect statement that alludes to a truth, but that statement on its merit is false. You know, so what I try to do is I always look at the layers. Whenever statements are made, I would always look at the layers, you know, because I always see things in layers anyway. And then try to identify the underlying motives. And then try to give people facts that would lead them to see that too, because most people are trained to only stay on their surface. You know, and of course you already know, in most houses that they call religious houses, they will not tell the people the truth, that the intuitive mind is actually a doorway to their natural psychic abilities. You know, and most people are trained subtly by dogma systems that's promoted in the name of religion to actually close that door and suppress it, which is what is one of the keys to the priesthood maintaining their power over the people. And when if someone comes around them that is not afraid of their intuitive mind and just uses it loosely, nature starts evolving or pulling out your psychic abilities, which are absolutely natural. You know, they're not unique. You know, like a lot of times when people deal with psychics or people who are seers, they look at them as like special. And, you know, personally, I don't, but, you know. And for the most part, I don't condemn it, but I don't appreciate the idea of putting anyone on a pedestal because they have psychic abilities, because that's a natural tendency of humanity. And it has been the priesthood who has helped in the dogma system to suppress it. So that allows those who have it to seem special. Then they dress themselves up in beautiful garb and start taking widow's pennies. And this is what Yahshua was arguing about. And you already know the priesthood is the one that codified and you know, put the name Jesus on them, which is a password. It's nothing wrong with the name Jesus, but that's not who he is. You know, but that's another thing so that people can't deal with the energy. You know, because they're actually his enemy, they're not his friend. They just use him as a front. But people who can see in layers can see that. And children can even see that, but children usually don't have the positional power to express their true mind. And when they do, the parents usually smack them down and mold them while they're young, and so they suppress that. You know, on a personal level, you know, my parents never tried to suppress that from me. You know, I never thought of it, you know, like when I was a child, but I did recognize that a lot of times when you know, because I was very vocal type stuff. And like a lot of children, you know, children are more honest. But I noticed as I was growing up in school, and also as I started getting involved in different organizations, it always got me in trouble. And as a child, I started suppressing it. But as I got older, I don't care, I don't have nothing to prove. But the point of it is, if everybody has that ability, they just need to stop being afraid. And they need to stop being afraid, to think, to speak, and to be honest. But the other thing that I recognized too, as I got a little older, and there's another reason why a lot of people suppress it, because what occurs is that you have to learn how to, in a more layman's terms, so like live in two worlds. If you and it makes people uncomfortable, you know, because it's hard to maintain what you call expected intersocial activities on a level that they expect. If you deal with your psychic mind, because many of the values that you maintain on this level, on the physical level, is not as important to you. And people will think you're out to lunch. And so a lot of people suppress it to try to get along, and they just go along to something, and they get lost in the corruption. You know, which is why a lot of people don't really develop. Now, priests know this, and there's many of them who promote that dogma in order to keep the people asleep. Because the people, for the most part, have not been aware that the enemies of all the prophets have been the priesthood. There ain't been no mystical devil in the woods or behind the door. It's always been the priesthood, and they don't want the masses to find that out. And I've thought about it many times, and it's becoming more and more clear to me. The sooner these people pull down the priesthood, the sooner they'll be liberated. That's one of the major bricks and dead weights that's stopping humanity from evolving. However, the danger of them not doing that is that nature, just like seasons, like nature will show you, like if you look at trees, right? You can look at like the wind patterns. You can look at, like if you be in the woods, you can look at the moss side of the tree and tell which way is north, even if it's in the dark. You know, or you can look at the bottom side of the leaves and kind of tell how the season's going to be. Nature tells you a lot of things. You know, we just need to start paying attention to it, like we used to a long time ago. But anyway, nature has been warning us, and we've had a lot of time. The danger that we're in right now is that people's fears, denials, and tendencies not to dismantle the dark priesthood's institutions is going to cause a lot of them to suffer the consequences. So because we're in an energy right now that we don't have the option of continuing accepting BS in the name of religion, and then thinking that one of these days we'll decide that we want to start dealing with truth. If you get the point. So we're on what you call an apex level now. People who can see it. And so that's where the warning is. The warning is people don't have a lot of time to mess around with either choosing a side. They're either going to serve Rome or they're going to deal with the truth. Now, and so you can't say God or Rome, because Rome is also God, if you get the point. So you have to understand, you can't even use that word loosely. You know, because the assumption that people have that God is the name of the supreme being is a falsehood too. You know, it's a positional position, you know. And actually the Pope is the God of this world, you know. But my interest in this particular situation is trying to empower the smallest amongst us, you know, because we've been so suppressed and so burdened with BS and dogma for so many generations that most people don't see any tools. They can't recognize any tools that they have. But they know in their hearts that when they sit around praying on things and stuff like that, in their hearts they know it's never worked for them. But they do it because they don't know what else to do, if you get the point. And they're afraid to let it go because that's the only, you know, blanket they have. You know, like a little cartoon, Lemuel in the cartoon Lucy, whatever his name is, yeah, got that flies over in this dirty blanket and he won't let it go. So that means he's handicapped permanently. So it's an arm that's totally useful that he's handicapped. And likewise, it has been with dogma. And there's another reason why over the years that I've always presented the Moorish movement from informational and civil side more than, although I interject what you call Kabbalistic gnosis in it, which is actually religious philosophy. But spirituality is breathing and breathing techniques. So I'm careful using that word or throwing it around because people get the misconception that they've been trained with that because they go pray, make salat and all that stuff, that's spirituality. That's not spirituality. That is mental exercises for discipline in Gnostic instruction. If you get, but they don't get the Gnostic instruction. Or the breathing techniques that are actually designed to cleanse your cells, activate your cells, and also pull memory out of your cells. And the priesthood almost never teaches the masses that.
So that's yoga?
Huh?
That's yoga? Yoga? What you're saying is yoga? The breathing techniques and stuff?
Breathing, breath, and breathing techniques is spirituality. All the other stuff that they've been telling you is spirituality, going to church, mosque, synagogue, that's not spirituality. It's not. Doesn't mean it's bad. That's not spirituality. The priesthood know that, rabbis know that, imams know that, grand sheikhs know that, philosophers know that, PhDs know that, doctors of ecclesiastics know that, but they don't teach it to the masses because they can't get they can't get them to buy them 2 cars or airplane and 2 parishes and spend Jesus' half every year in the Bahamas with Susie or Bertha who sings on the choir. You know, and then lie to people saying that Jesus got a bank account at Chase Manhattan. And you got to give 10% of your earnings toward Jesus' bank account. And they've been getting away with that for generations. But of course, that's what people who are suffering mental midgetry, you know, and don't know that they are. And some know that they are and are in denial. But a child recognizes immediately, broke gods, you don't need no broke gods. Broke gods need you. But they'll knock that out of that child's mental mind while they're young. You know, to prepare to mold them to take care of the priesthood who have actually made thrones for themselves in the name of Jesus, in the name of Allah, in the name of Muhammad, things like this. You know, it's always in the name of them, which means they receive by their claim an order, a delegation of authority order, which they never produce. They just make that claim, you know, so they've been getting away with it for quite some time. But I don't argue with them, or I don't argue with that. What I try to do is expose the records, and some of their own records that actually show them to be the frauds that they are. You know, don't try to convince people, give them the documents. And if they want to be liberated, they'll be liberated. If they don't, if they're dirty-hearted, they're where they belong. But they don't know that Rome's going to sacrifice them anyway. See, so a lot of them who are maintaining allegiance with Rome think that Rome is pleased with them. They're just, for him, they're just fuel. You know, and as soon as he finishes using them, they will be eliminated. You know, so you don't worry about them. What you want to do is give the innocent children or the next generations a chance, because it's become quite clear that most of the generations that have become before us are so contaminated that they'll probably be eliminated anyway. But for the few that want, you know, to do good, for the sake of being good, just for the sake of justice, or for the sake of Jesus, Jesus in that code means justice, then so be it. You know, but like the prophet said, he came for the young and yet unborn, the old can go if they want to. Because it's not, none of this is out of anyone's purview or capacity to comprehend or to understand. People who don't understand is because they don't want it. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, they have a right. But the deal of it is, in this energy right now, nature is not going to allow them to continue the fraud and then suck off the poor and get away with it and send it to the next generation. This is the termination generation, so you can consider Terminator type thing, whatever it takes. In other words, whatever it takes, the Negro problem will be solved within this span of this generation. Of course, there'll be people coming and going, but in general, this stuff is not going to be sent to the next generation. They're not going to get this off again. You know, they're not going to get this off again. And so what they do, whenever the prophets come, they would simply take them out. See, but right now the energy is in multiple bodies. There's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do. And they know they're going to lose. The deal, but they're going to battle until they see death in the face. You know, and that's just simply the truth. And then the people also can't go against their machine. They don't have the power, but they do have the thought power. That's where I want to approach. You know, let them see, they have to, in their heart and mind, reject Rome. It can't be where, you know, they get a package or some UCCs or something and think that a form does it. They're immoral. They're trained to ignore any moral, ethical, or religious cause or purpose, and to carry out the unum sanctum policy at all costs, man, woman, child, animal, earth. It's a scorched earth policy. And this is why even people who align themselves with them have no idea that they're going to be sacrificed too. They think that Rome give them a benefit now, you know, they sell out, and Rome going to give them a benefit now if they're used. They're just fuel. You know, and in that morning, this is where, if people look at Septuaginta or the old Sumerian text, that later, for many millennia, then it comes up to Septuaginta and comes up to the Bible, where it talks about what good does it do a man to gain the world and lose his soul. You know, these principles are rooted in nature. That's not a belief system. It's rooted in nature, it's cause and effect in nature. But what a lot of people, I think a lot of people who really don't understand how nature works have gotten lost in the dogma systems and don't understand that the energies of the constellations, when the constellations shift, so do the lords of that last constellation. And so now the Aquarian light is coming in, everything that is constructed under the Piscean light dies out. That's nature. It has nothing to do with what people believe, what they feel, stuff like that. And now, in a dogmatic form, they would call that Jesus come again. Or they would say the new age coming in. Or they'll say the age of Aquarius. Or the age of ascension. Or Jesus ascending. They all mean the same thing. But the Yahshua, the Jesus, actually is the body of the people themselves, not an individual. You know, so when the Aquarian light comes in, which is coming in now, you know, there is no shadow. And so where you see a physical shadow, you can kind of look at that in the abstract or the ethereal plane where there is no shadow. Therefore, there is nothing that can be hidden. So all of the tricks that Rome has used for the purpose of world conquest exposes him. And it's not unlike the truth of a leech. Truth of a leech. Leech, vampire, relative. They need the host to live. So with all the threats, you know, to kill the host, they die too. So they need to deceive. They need to deceive because they need to suck off your life. But they need you to have a certain level of healthiness so that they can feed off you because they're parasitic. This is what must be understood. The U.S. democracy platform is a political platform that was set up for demons. And it's entirely parasitic. Everything that is structured in it is for parasitic operations. And so this is why, you know, like certain things that I'll emphasize over and over again, the Act of Congress 1871 and the coup d'etat, people need to understand. And it's not that everybody on the platform prior to that was necessarily honorable, but the principles of the platform were indeed positive and honorable and harmonic with principles of divine law. They were harmonic with Hermetic law. And this is why you see the alleged founding fathers like Jefferson, John Adams, etc., all of them had Korans. You know, but they weren't looking at it from a dogmatic perspective, if you understand. And when Obama went to Egypt and exposed that the American Constitution is derived from Muslim law, he's telling the truth, he's telling the real history. But you know that the masses don't know that. They haven't been told that. They think these, you know, if they think they're Christians, they think it's something opposite to them. Or even if they think they're Muslims and they don't know the real history, they think it's opposite to them. You know, but the masses have not, for the most part, are not aware of the distinction between religion and dogma. The same way the masses aren't, in general, aware of the difference between fiat and money. And so they'll speak of them in the same breath, and they'll operatively interchange with each other in the same breath on all those platforms. And likewise, you know, not knowing fundamental positive law discipline, which is jurisprudence, right? And so that's the science that treats of positive law. And logically, the science that treats of positive law will also give you a demonstration of negative law, which is called color of law. And so the U.S. democracy platform was set up distinctly and specifically to perpetrate color of law, which is why they started calling the defeated Moors colored people, because they are the target. Their estate is the target. You know, and it's not complex. However, if you hit on every point, some people have a tendency to start getting gray. And, you know, they stop seeing, they start getting confused because they can't look at multiple platforms at the same time and stay clear. You know, now I understand that. You know, but for people who can see on levels, you know, it's no different than, you know, you throwing, you know, putting something on the table and they can identify the pieces and they're not confused. You know, but most people aren't aware that they can see in levels, but that they don't see in levels. You understand? Now, people who are trained, some are trained and some exercise it naturally. Who do see in levels, they'll usually clash with people who don't see in levels because they don't appear to understand each other. You know, and then they get frustrated because they think that what they see is what they see. When someone sees on level, sees beyond things. Naturally, it's not like, you know, you're doing all this stuff, you know, well, let me meditate for 2 minutes. So, no, that's, to me, I can't speak for everyone. To me, that's BS. You just see it. It's just what it is. You breathe, you never think about it. You just notice it when you notice that people don't do it. That's what I noticed when I was a child, and why I suppressed it when I was a child. And I think that a lot of people do that. And I think that's a negative when parents see that in their children and they suppress it. You know, but anyway, let's get back to the point. The alleged founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, were all deists. Doesn't mean they were not without their faults, because I can go into their history and show you a lot of do. But that's not my point. We're talking about the fundamentals of what was presented as a platform for humanity in general. So the United States Republic order was actually set up as what you call a platform, a political platform for harmonics and peace and allodial recognition of human rights. and to stop the hundreds of years of wars between the Moors and the Christians. They'll write it in history as Muslims and Christians. So when they say Muslims, you know, they're simply talking about muscles, tissues, and bones. Most people who don't know think they're talking about a religious belief system. No, it's the living beings, the original Asiatics on the planet. They're Muslims, all right? Has nothing to do with belief system. Has to do with the physical body coming from the womb of woman. All right, just like you say fetus, Muslim, fetus, same thing. Muscles, tissues, bones come from Muslim. This is where you get Muslim from, Muslim, muscles, tissues, bones, the anatomy of the body. And then you see, sometimes they'll use, in philosophy, they'll make a circle, during a 60-degree circle, and they'll have a man standing in the circle with his legs on a V, arms like that. That's arm, leg, leg, arm, head. Forward, arm, leg, arm, head. Actually, Allah forward, Allah backward. Man and Allah are one. Do you understand? You're the living manifest coming through the womb of woman, which is the stargate of that which is divine for existence on this particular planet. Although there's other beings that are more advanced than us in different stages, in different areas, the issue is that you have to learn on this school. So you have to master your lessons that you agree to on this level. But I don't want to get into that. What I want to do is try to get where the average person, how can the average person put a nail in the vampire's coffin? That's my interest. All right, keeping it, in basic language, keep it simple. You know, because no matter how big the monster is, as they talk about in the book of Daniel, legs of iron, feet of clay, I'm concentrating on the clay feet. I notice all the other stuff, and, you know, I'm not impressed. And I'm more interested in getting people to focus on the foundation on the feet, cracking feet. Same thing that a child would immediately recognize, but adults, because they're so cluttered with a whole bunch of other stuff, can't see it. And so they acquiesce because they don't see that they have any power. They feel powerless. In their heart, they know this stuff is wrong. In their heart, they know this stuff is corrupt, but they give up. And that's what the European uses as justification for maintaining the servitude system, which is connotatively referred to as slavery, that the people consent to it. You get the point? This is how they're operating. So my interest is to give you a realization of power that you have right now, you know, to use it. That's not vague, you know, that's not, you know, like, oh man, that's spiritual, you know, that bull crap type stuff. Let's talk about real functional things, you know. Everybody please take a, you all that coming in, take a picture of this, Islam. Take a picture of this because I'm going to erase the board. This is Ramanu's information. Now, as an interim, we're going to talk about, you know, adverse claim and the reason for adverse claim, all right? Much of this information is the reason for the adverse claim. What's on the board? Now, if you all got this, because I'm going to erase this. You got it? Now, when you understand in general the operations current, and because most people are trained in tunnel vision and they don't use their higher mind, so most people don't respect their intuitive mind, and that's why they don't see in layers. Not because they can't, it's because they've been trained from childhood to look at things on a surface level. But it was also designed to actually suppress the intuitive mind, which is the psychic mind, which is the gateway to the psychic mind. And when the prophets come, when they talk about Yahushua, and they will codename him as Jesus, what his major mission was is to try to get you to respect your intuitive mind. And he would even use the example of children. Because what he's signifying is that they're less contaminated and it's not covered up. The priesthood actually buries it with psyops. And because the priesthood is always hiding behind Jesus, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, Confucius, the people always think that they're working for the most divine. When 90% of them work for the Pope of Rome, who is the God of this earth, who refers to himself as Vicar. And Vicar means substitute. And Vicar means substitute of Christ. All right? So that's, when you hear that term, that is referred to as the crown seat in some ways, or the seat of the Holy See. All right? And all of the miseries that's been on Earth planet, the wars, all your major wars, many of your biological diseases, the fraud systems dealing with financial fraud, etc., over the years, going to and fro the earth, devouring nations, comes from the seat of Rome. Which is why Rome is the major projector of the assassins for all the prophets. Are we clear? And they declare themselves God. The bishopric, this is the bishopric, this is the body politic of the Pope. Pope and the bishopric. And their subordinates will be bishops. That's their subordinate minions. That's the collective body politic of the Pope of Rome. Gods of this earth. That has got nothing to do, they understand divine law, but it has nothing to do with the good that you think that they've been doing. They've been actually the opposite, which is the key to their successes. If you get the point? In other words, they've been playing as the angels of the light, and they're really the angels of the dark. And it's worked quite well for them. All right? Now, the political platform by which their bulls are enforced. Write this down and get used to this, because you're going to have to start studying these, so you need to know what's been. These are the laws that you're actually dealing with. The governing laws. The legislation, etc. That's their guidebook. And then the legislations that they produce are guided by the church bulls. On the surface, I'll just say this, and try to write this down, because I'm not going to deal with this specifically. You're dealing with unum sanctum, dum diversus, Romanus pontifex, inter cratera divina, Sister QV Act of 1666, 1666. And then collectively, they may be executed, like in the courts systems, which are trading venues for human trafficking. You'll deal with what is known as the Doctrine of Discovery. So when you see them going to and fro the earth, invading countries, stealing their resources, that's the Doctrine of Discovery. So when they tell you in school, as an example, Columbus discovered America, what they're telling you is that Columbus was a minion for the popes of Rome to enforce the Doctrine of Discovery at Morocco, which is the North Gate, which is North America. Are we clear? But they had to defeat the Moors in Europe. And this is where Ferdinand and Isabella of Aragon and Castile merged their kingdoms and set up Spain. and the fall of the Red House, which is known as the Alhambra, or the Caliphate's palace. And from 1492 on up, they've been able to accelerate the enforcement of the unum sanctum operations. And this is basically what people who are non-scholars have been referring to as white supremacy. It's a code word for the unum sanctum hegemony, actually the God of this world for the platform of the demons. And it's also codified under what is known as the Spanish Inquisition. So the Spanish Inquisition is the Inquisition against the Moors and Yahudi. Both the same. Yahudi is misrepresented in history as Jew or Hebrew. That's those who crossed the river before the Atlantis became the big ocean that it is, when it used to be a river. Before the cocoa plate split, or the cocoa plate shift in old Central Africa, which you call Old Amexem, Olmec, the cocoa plate shift, and then the Atlantis became an ocean. Those of us who crossed the river before the great super-Dabir, the dividing of the land between Ham and Cush, are called the Ibri, those who crossed the river. This is where some people keep thinking Hebrew means a different people or different bloodline or religion. It is not. It's those of us who are the heirs to the land in the North Gate. And Rome and their minion organizations and peoples who have controlled the lands of the Moors after 1492 refer to themselves in your secret societies as, quote unquote, the keepers of the North Gate. And so you'll see Shriners often throw that around when they have the Shriners parades, and they wear the Moorish fez and dress it in jewels, and then they wear all the ancient regalia of ancient Hikupta, which they'll call Egypt, which is ancient Hikupta, and they parade all around, and they have like control of your biggest hospitals, the biggest institutions, and all of your major industry in the Western Hemisphere, whether England, Canaan land, which you call Canada, and Northwest, under U.S. corporation jurisdiction, they're referred to as keepers of the North Gate. Now, the point that I'm making is, most of you are already aware, except for a few scholars, that the heirs to this estate have been scattered. And they've been branded to take them out of heirship. Keep in mind, in law, in order for you to be what you would call descendable, you must be in the honor of your mothers and your fathers. In order for you to have the capacity in law to enforce the common law, which is predicated on Hermetic law, which is called divine law, you must be in propria persona. In layman's terms, it means you must be yourself, and it must be provable under challenge, lest you cannot use the common law. And this is where a lot of Europeans around the North Gate who've been starting sovereignty groups are having difficulty because they've known the real history, but they've been bringing out some of the real history to save themselves because they're being thrown under the bus in layman's terms. However, they're not the true Americans. We are. You understand? So they're still trying to steal the estate. They want the Republic back without directly saying that the Republic is tied to the Moors, who they've branded Negro, Black, and Colored, Smith, Jones, and Johnson to steal their estate. Are we clear? Yep. And so with the political platform that they set up, which is the U.S. demon platform called the U.S. democracy, they set that up in 1861. And this is different things that we've told you at different times and we've given you records of. Once you understand this, you can understand why Woodrow Wilson in 1913 converted all allodial titles and aboriginal titles into mortgages and deeds, 1913. That's a counter move to Drawley. And so you already know that when you're talking to most of the people and you talk about allodial title, you know, or aboriginal title, most of them really are not familiar with that, and some, you know, look at you like you got your head screwed on backwards. And we're not talking about ancient history where you got to dig up something beneath the pyramid. We're talking 1913. You know, and so my interest is in that area for the moment when we're talking about adverse claim. Point is, in the rule and the law of estate or heritability, an heir must be competent, an heir must be mature in the sense that of competent mind. Female must be at least 18, actually 16, truthfully. And the male 21, because males develop later. You know, we're kind of slower. Now, the deal is, if they find you not in proper person, they can claim you a ward of whatever jurisdiction is operating on the land. They will tag that as ward of the state. That's another term of taking the heir and then making the heir what is called a dependent to the state, and therefore has no say in any benefit of the heirship. And this is where you get the term wardship tenures. And wardship tenures is actually the military operations of Rome in the North Gate, where they've been going in and out of the Sister QV Trust and the Cedars Trust that they set up after the fall of the Red House. And this is why they use the term Red House also in your higher degrees of Masonry. It's really the Alhambra. So that their politics, their modern politics is predicated on that. Are we clear? And so by these people for so many generations operating and doing business in the brand systems set up, it was like the system was automatically structured to steal the birthright because they cannot claim an estate under the black codes. That's why they institutionalized the Christian black codes in 1724. They interjected them, actually from the Codes Noirs of the Franciscan Brotherhood. I think that was formulated around 1620 in that area. And then after they closed the freedman, the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands in 1868, then what they did, they converted the platform that they set up, the political platform, as person. You know, so they call their private corporate entity person, so they can convert the estate of the Moors, who are under the Negro, black, and colored brands, to the state, while operating in what you call estate and trust law to appear innocent. And so it wouldn't be easily, at least on the surface, traced. But anyone who could see in layers could see it. Once you have the information, it's very, very clear. You know, but if you're not aware of it, you don't see it because you have false expectations. And so it was very important for them to set up personation systems. And this is why the distortion of the word person has also been presented since 61, so that they could convert the estate. And as a reminder for those of you who are scholars and